Hi, this is going to be a very simple or simplistic introduction to the Medicare cloud database that shows all physicians and labs by year back to 2014 and shows what they billed in volume and dollar payments for every CPT code that any given physician or lab was involved with. So to get started, we're on the Google page here. I'm going to search for Medicare physician utilization data, which is how I usually get to this link. And there it is, a page called Medicare Provider Utilization and Payment Data. You'll see that it has data files going back to 2012. Only the most recent ones are really, the last 3 or 4 are usable cloud data. The earliest ones are giant flat files that you have to open in a database manager like Access, or they're huge individual Excel files with like 1 million lines. So you can't really use the early ones very easily. But let's look at the most recent one, 2018. There it is, 2018. These are supposed to come out every year at a 1.5-year delay in May or June. The 2018 data did not come out until almost December 2020, so it was about 6 months late. And what you see on this page is there are several different files, and they're all worthwhile. There are some instructional files down here that try to help you use things, some PDFs. But mostly I think you understand these files by playing with them. So there are procedure summary tables down here. That's a national aggregate data table, so the national uses of, say, 81479. And then there's a state level data file. Now, Medicare will give you these state level data files elsewhere in 50 Excel spreadsheets, which is really awkward. Here, the state level data is in one giant cloud database, so that's much more useful. Above that, this area is called provider summary table. And that's a summary of every provider who got paid by Medicare Part B, from their MPI number to their name, street address, number of services they billed for. And this one's sort of interesting. It also shows you the age distribution of their Medicare patients, gender distribution, racial distribution, and whether they have one of 8 or 10 different diseases like heart failure or Alzheimer's disease. The provider summary table is kind of interesting. And then you get in the detailed data, which is by CPT code, by provider. So if 100 providers build a particular CPT code, it will have 100 lines. If 50,000 providers build that CPT code, it will have 50,000 lines. So let's get into here and see how to search on it. There's a CPT disclaimer. We'll click on that. And wait. And there we go. It tells us where we are, Medicare provider utilization and payment data, physician and other supplier for calendar year 2018. And we see this was released in late 2020. So the key thing here is view data. And it's thinking. So there's the data, and you'll notice down here there are 9.9 million lines. So you can't do anything with this data in the raw form, and they would show you by default about 100 lines at a time out of the 9.9 million lines. So what you really need is a filter. And here's a box for adding new filters. Now, let me back up and say the filter, close that. You can filter on any column of the data. So you can filter on NPI, the last name, first name. You could filter on the street address if you wanted to. You can filter on the state. That's useful. If you filter on groups of states, you can build up a MAC profile. HCPCS code, they've got brief definitions of the HCPCS code. And then you get into this data, which we'll see a little later, average charge, average dollars allowed, average dollars paid. They don't give you the dollars per line. You have to multiply together the number of services times the average dollar value. But let's go back to where we were, the filter function. It says add a new filter. So let's do a filter for 81479. That is the filter for the unlisted molecular pathology code. Whoops, but I searched under National Provider Identifier Number. That won't work. I need to search under HCPCS code. Okay, now we see that the data is 58 rows. So 58 different labs got paid for 81479. We can look up the states they're in and so on. You can do another thing. For example, you could search for another code, 81225. That's a pharmacogenetics code. Now you've got 138 lines, so you gained about 70 or 80 lines by adding that. But let's take that off, and you can go to another condition. So, for example, you could say that you want to search on the state code of the provider, and then you can put in the state code. And in this part of the database, the state codes are two-letter abbreviations, which you'd probably expect. In some other parts of the database, the state is the whole state name, so you have to know where you are. So now we'll go to, remember, we're only clicking on 81479. We could put in a state code, but we're not going to. So we're going to go now to export. And pick download, pick CSV for Excel. Oh, that's my taxes. You don't need to know anything about that. We'll just go into this temporary file. So we'll call this 28 data video course, and it's really 81479 data. So there we go. It's a comma separated file, and it's downloading, and right away I'm going to click on that, which will open it in Excel. And I'll bring the Excel onto my screen here. And so here you've got the data. I'm going to click on wrap text so we can see the full column names. And I'm going to click on view freeze panes, which will keep that always showing up. So there you go. You've got the lab. You can see their NPIs. I think Keras is first because it has the lowest NPI number, interestingly, of all the data that we have here. And as you scroll across, you see street addresses, states, provider type clinical lab, not surprisingly for 81479. There's the HCPCS code we sorted on, 81479. And you could also sort this and maybe delete some of the states that you weren't interested in, or sort for the states that you did like. And here's the main trick that I use all the time. So I take a column here and I call it $sum. You can call it anything you want. And I will say equals the number of services times the average Medicare allowed. So there's a dollar value. I'm going to go up here to format and click on dollars so it looks like dollars. I'm going to get rid of the pennies. I'm going to click on $sum. So that double clicking on this little corner makes the column fill. So now we see 81479, every lab that got paid for it. You know the state they're in, you can look that up. And then the number of total dollars they were paid and the number of services that they provided. So Keras apparently only provided 29 services of 81479, but LabCorp provided 563 services of 81479. But Keras's average price, allowed amount there, was $1,700, and LabCorp's average allowed price was $327. We can now do a sum. So the sum is this little sigma sign up here. I'm going to click on the sigma sign, and I'm going to drag down through all the dollars per line, and we'll find that the 81479 payments was $135 million. Finally, the last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into $sum. I'm going to go to sort and filter and sort largest to smallest. So the largest payments for 81479 were $37 million to AssureX, and the next was $21 million to CareDx, and the next was $16 million to Genomic Health, and so on. So I can put this value, 37 million, up, equal sign. We'll say equal sign and put 37 million over the 135 million. And we find, let's click on percent format, that AssureX got paid 28%, which is 37 over 135 of all of the Part B dollars for 81479. So you can go back to the original data set. Oh, one last thing. These are downloaded as CSV files. And usually the first thing I do is I go to Save As, and I save it as an Excel workbook. If you don't do that, it can fall apart and turn into a million numbers separated by commas. So we went to Save As, we picked Excel workbook, and we just click Save. And that now saves it like an Excel workbook. And I'll close that out. So if you go back here, let me take you into one other database. Oops. Let's see. Need to go further back. So let's go into a different type of data, the procedure summary tables. Let's do national aggregate data. And we'll go to view data again. Now this data has 13,000 lines because there were 13,000 payable CPT codes or HCPCS codes or drug codes, J codes, in 2018. So that's why there are 13,000 lines. So you'd find, let's quickly pick something common, filter, add a filter condition. Let's say it's 81479 again. And there we go. You've only got 2 rows. Because they show facility and office separately. So basically, let's just focus on this row. 81479, molecular pathology procedure, was paid to 127 different providers in total, even if they were only paid for 1 or 2 units. The total units of 81479 was number of services, 88,000. The number of beneficiaries were 65,000. The average payment was $1,531 and so on. I'm going to show you one more thing that's kind of interesting, which is go to the provider summary table. So this is a summary of providers. There were, God knows, probably 1 million doctors serving Medicare, 3,000, 5,000 labs. So those are all here in the provider summary table. And we'll go to view data. So let's see what's in provider summary table. Now we could sort this for provider type pathology or provider type clinical laboratory. But let's just look at this poor guy who happens to have the first number, Dr. Ardalan Enkashafi. He's in Cumberland, Maryland, internal medicine. And look at the data you can get on him. The number of drug codes he used, the number of HCPCS codes associated with drug services, the total drug submitted charge amount, the number of HCPCS codes associated with medical rather than drug services, total Medicare payment amount, number of beneficiaries less than 65, he saw 57. Number of beneficiaries 65 to 74, he saw 136. Number of beneficiaries greater than age 84, this guy saw 96. And you can go out here further, you can get the percent with Alzheimer's disease. He saw apparently 31% of patients with Alzheimer's disease. Here's another doctor saw 8% with Alzheimer's disease. Here's a doctor that saw 48% with Alzheimer's disease. Let's see who he was. That's the 4th row. Dr. Girardi here is in Brookfield, Pennsylvania in family practice and saw 48% of patients with Alzheimer's disease. So you could get this data for any lab. LabCorp, Quest. Of course, LabCorp and Quest have multiple offices, so they bill out in multiple places, but it's very detailed data. That's been an informal presentation. It's not extensively rehearsed, but it does give you some idea from the initial Google search to looking inside some of the different cloud data files, how you can get this data, filter it, and then pull it down in Excel to have on your hard drive. Thank you.